There's a sound a person makes when they realize you're not going to forgive them. It's not a sob, not quite a scream. It's somewhere in between, like a breath that got caught halfway through breaking. That's the sound I heard through the door last night. 2:12 a.m., to be exact. I know the time because I was sitting on the floor, watching the clock tick past the minute she was supposed to arrive, 2 years ago. She was late. Very late. Back then, I thought being stood up by your own wife was the most humiliating thing that could happen to a man. I was wrong. Turns out, letting her back in would have been worse. She was outside now, barefoot, hair sticking to her face from the rain, knocking like the door owed her something. Her voice cracked when she said my name. I didn't answer. I just sat in the dark kitchen, knees pulled up to my chest, clutching a chipped coffee mug with the words, "You matter," fading off the side. It was the same mug I held the night she chose strangers and music and glitter over me. That night, she said, "It's just a party." But it wasn't. It was a message, a choice, and choices echo. I moved away in silence. No fight, no farewell speech. Just a man walking out of his own skin, disappearing into places without Wi-Fi and memories. I didn't tell anyone. I didn't want to explain how someone can smile while slowly abandoning you. Now she's here, on her knees, in the same dress she wore that night, begging. But I don't open the door, because I remember something she doesn't. I never locked it. She just never came home. I stayed in that chair long after her voice cracked into silence. The knocking stopped. No more shouts. Just the rain, soft, patient, like it had all the time in the world. I didn't get up. My legs had gone numb hours ago, but I didn't care. Pain felt honest. Comfort never did. She used to laugh when I said things like that. "You're always so dramatic, Clay," she'd say. Except she never called me Clay. She always said my full name like it was a punchline. Like I was some running joke she didn't have the courage to explain. It was quiet now. That kind of quiet that makes you wonder if you imagined everything. I should have checked. Should have peeked through the blinds. But I didn't. I couldn't. Because deep down, I didn't want her to be there, and I didn't want her to be gone. That's the sick part no one talks about. When someone breaks you, you don't stop loving them. You just bury it under resentment and hope they never dig it back up. But she was digging. I knew it the moment I saw the envelope on my porch the next morning. No name. Just taped to the door like a scarlet letter. I stared at it for 3 hours before touching it. When I finally opened it, there were only 4 words inside. You never even asked. No context. No signature. But I didn't need one. The handwriting hit me harder than the message. That handwriting used to decorate birthday cards, grocery lists, sticky notes left on my pillow when she'd go out with friends. Back when she still pretended I was part of her world. You never even asked. I read those words again and again, like they were supposed to rewrite the past. Like they could erase the image burned into my mind. Her on that balcony 2 years ago, high heels dangling off her toes, drink in hand, leaning into someone else like he was the center of her orbit. I had asked. I asked when I waited. I asked when I made dinner. I asked when I sat in bed, watching our wedding playlist on mute. But asking silently doesn't count, does it? The doorbell rang just before sunset. And this time, I stood up. I wasn't ready to forgive her. I wasn't ready to forget. But I was ready to find out what the hell she meant. I didn't mean to open it all the way. Just enough to speak. To tell her to leave. Maybe to hand her that note back and ask what kind of sick game she was playing. But I opened it. And she stepped in like she'd never left. No hesitation. No hello. Just eyes that refused to meet mine and a silence so heavy I could hear my own pulse cracking in my ears. She looked thinner. Not sick thin. More like haven't eaten in 3 days thin. Her makeup was smeared, but not from tears, from time. And her dress, the same one from 2 years ago, clung to her like it didn't know it no longer belonged. Still, I didn't say anything. Neither did she. She walked past me like she still knew the layout. Straight into the kitchen. Same stool. Same corner. Same posture. Elbows on the counter. Hands folded like she was about to confess to something. I wanted to scream. To throw the note back in her face. To remind her that this wasn't her home anymore. But instead I just stood there, watching her like she was some strange version of a dream I used to have before I learned better. She finally spoke, her voice quiet but sharp, like broken glass under a blanket. "You moved the mugs." I blinked. That was it. 2 years of nothing. And that's what she says? "They used to be in the second cabinet," she added, as if that somehow explained everything. I got new ones, I replied. Yours had lipstick stains I couldn't wash off. Her mouth twitched like she wanted to say something cruel, something familiar. But it didn't come. Instead, she just nodded and looked down at her hands. I noticed then that she was wearing the ring. Not on her finger, on a chain around her neck. Like a secret too dangerous to wear out loud. You left it on the counter, I said. No, she replied. I left it for you to find. You think that's better? Her voice cracked. Not from volume. From weight. I waited for you. For hours. But you never came. I laughed. I couldn't help it. The sound came out bitter, ugly. You waited for me? While you were out partying. While I sat alone reheating dinner 3 times like an idiot. She didn't argue. She just reached into her coat pocket and pulled out a small, battered voice recorder. Old school. Like the kind therapists use. I want you to hear something, she said, setting it on the table. Then, if you still want me gone, I'll leave. Forever. But you should know, the truth doesn't beg. I didn't press play. Not yet. Because suddenly I wasn't sure I was ready to know what the hell happened that night. And more importantly, why she still remembered where the mugs used to be. I stared at that little black recorder like it was a ticking bomb. It sat between us, humming with silence, while her fingers trembled just inches away from it, like she might snatch it back if I breathed too loud. What's on it? I asked finally, my voice so dry it felt like splinters in my throat. She didn't look at me when she answered. Your voice. That didn't make sense. I hadn't recorded anything. I didn't even own a recorder. And yet there she was, eyes down, heartbeat visible in her neck, like she'd just handed me a loaded gun and wasn't sure which of us it would shoot. So I pressed play. The static hit first, soft, distant, the kind that reminds you of old cassette tapes and rainy days. Then a click, then a voice. My voice. I don't know how to say this without ruining everything. I froze. It was me. No question. The cadence, the hesitations, the way I breathe through my nose when I'm about to say something cowardly, it was all there. But I had no memory of ever speaking these words. She watched me. Not the recorder. Me. I think I'm losing her, the voice continued. Not in a dramatic way. It's quiet. Like a dripping faucet you don't notice until it's rotted the floorboards. She still smiles, still says, I love you. But it doesn't land anymore. It hovers between us like a reminder that she used to mean it. I felt cold spread up my arms. She said there's a party Friday. Some gallery thing. Said I could come if I wanted, but she didn't really want me there. And I think I might let her go. Just let her choose. And if she doesn't choose me, the voice cracked. I'll disappear. I'll leave everything behind. Not to punish her. Just to survive. Click. Silence. The world didn't move. Not for a while. She leaned forward, elbows on knees, hands clasped like a confession was chewing its way up her spine. You left that recording on my pillow, she said quietly. The morning after the party. You were already gone. I didn't. I stopped. My mouth kept moving, but no sound came out. I felt like I was watching someone else panic in my body. I played it 1,000 times, she went on. Thought it was your way of ending things without facing me. But now you say you don't remember recording it? I shook my head. She blinked slowly. Then who did? I couldn't answer. Because I suddenly remembered something I hadn't thought about in 2 years. The voicemail. 3 days before the party, I got a call in the middle of the night. No one spoke. Just breathing. I deleted it. Didn't even think twice. But now, the memory of that breath felt exactly like the one on the recorder. Same rhythm. Same pace. Same weight. Someone had been in our house. Someone who sounded exactly like me. The silence that followed was worse than any scream. I felt like I was underwater, ears ringing, heartbeat thudding behind my eyes. The kind of panic that doesn't show up loud but spreads through your ribs like a disease. I didn't remember recording anything. I didn't remember leaving a message on her pillow. But that was my voice. The pauses, the tiny stutter on the word love, the breath I always took before saying something I didn't want to say. It was me. Or something pretending to be. Where did you find that? I asked finally. She didn't answer right away. Instead, she pulled something else out of her coat pocket, another recorder. Smaller, older, scuffed like it had been dropped and stepped on more than once. This one, she said carefully, I wasn't going to show you. I felt my stomach twist. She placed it gently on the counter like it might shatter. Her fingers lingered on it longer this time, as if letting it go meant something permanent. I didn't want to hear it. I already felt like reality was bending at the edges. warping into something I couldn't recognize. But I nodded anyway. She pressed play. And this time, it didn't start with my voice. It started with hers. "You said you'd never lie to me." Her voice snapped through the speaker, sharp and raw. "You said you'd always tell me if something was wrong." There was a rustling sound, like movement, footsteps, fabric. Then my voice again. Only it didn't sound like me anymore. Same tone, same words. But something was off. Colder, flatter, like a version of me stripped of hesitation or empathy. "You wouldn't understand," the fake me said. "I'm your wife, Clay." More shuffling. "You're the noise," the voice said. "You've always been the noise." And then, something I've never said. Something I would never say. "I should have left you sooner." Click. End. I didn't speak. She didn't either. Because we both heard it. Not just the voice, but the background. There was something under the conversation. A faint hum. A soft, rhythmic tap. A sound I hadn't heard in years, but recognized instantly. My old toaster. The one I sold the week I left. I looked up slowly, locking eyes with her. Her pupils were wide, dilated, her breathing shallow. "That wasn't you," she whispered. "No," I said. "But it used our voices." She nodded slowly, like she'd already suspected that. And then she dropped the question that made my skin crawl. "Do you remember the neighbor who went missing the day after you left?" I did. Mrs. Langley. Lived 2 doors down. Sweet, lonely. Always gave out full-size candy bars on Halloween. No one ever found her. Just an open back door, an empty coffee mug on the porch, and a faint scent of lavender in the kitchen. "I think," Macy said, "whatever was in our house, it didn't stop with us." She stood up, walked to the window, and peeled back the curtain slowly. "There's a man across the street," she whispered. My mouth went dry. "What man?" "The one who's been watching this house since sunset." I walked over, heart pounding in my throat. There was no one there. Just fog, wind, and a street lamp flickering like it was struggling to stay alive. But when I looked down, there were footprints on the sidewalk. Bare feet, pointing directly at our door. I didn't want to go outside. The idea of stepping into those barefoot tracks felt like inviting something ancient into my lungs. But she was already opening the door, already walking into the cold like answers were hiding out there in the fog, just waiting to be found if we were brave or stupid enough. The footprints were strange. Too small to be a man's, but too wide to be a child's. The shape was off, not flat, not arched. Just wrong. Like whoever made them didn't walk, but glided, dragging the edges as if gravity didn't agree with them. She was silent as we followed them. We didn't talk about the recordings. We didn't talk about the dress. We didn't talk about how she hadn't asked once why I never came back. And I didn't ask why she came now, after all this time. Because some truths hide behind timing like cowards, and if you look too closely, they fall apart. The trail moved along the sidewalk, then suddenly veered off toward the woods behind the neighborhood. The woods we swore we'd never go near again. Not since the fire. Not since the night she came home with that black mark on her wrist, too ashamed to tell me how it got there. The woods were quiet now. Even the insects had gone silent. That kind of silence where the air feels too thick, like sound would suffocate trying to move through it. We reached the fence. It was still broken where someone, maybe us, had torn it down years ago. The opening was wide enough for us to slip through, and on the other side, the footprints deepened in the wet ground, like whatever made them was heavier now. Tired. Settling. She stopped suddenly and pointed to the trees. I followed her gaze and saw it. A light. Dim, flickering, like a candle burning behind a thin veil of plastic. It wasn't moving. It wasn't growing brighter or dimmer. It was just there, waiting. "We shouldn't be here," I whispered, though I couldn't hear my own voice anymore. It was buried under something older, something pulsing in the soil beneath us. She didn't answer. Instead, she reached into her coat again and pulled out something I didn't recognize at first. A scarf. Faded, gray, edges frayed. My initials embroidered in the corner. "I found this a week after you left," she said. "Inside our closet. But you took all your clothes with you. I saw you pack." I stared at the scarf like it was a weapon. "I did take everything," I murmured. She nodded. "So how did it come back?" The light in the woods flickered again. And then, a sound. A high-pitched whine, like metal being pulled slowly through teeth. I don't know how else to describe it. It wasn't natural. It wasn't mechanical. It was the sound of something trying to mimic pain without understanding what pain was. She took a step forward toward the light. Macy. I grabbed her arm, but she pulled away firm. I think this thing wants us to remember, she said quietly. And it's showing us the version we forgot to look at. I didn't follow her right away. Not because I was scared of what was in the woods, but because I was terrified that whatever we found out there might prove that I wasn't the victim I thought I was. That maybe the person I became, the one who disappeared, wasn't running away from her. Maybe I was running from what I did. The deeper we walked into the woods, the harder it became to tell if we were moving forward at all. The trees looked identical in every direction, frozen in place like a crowd holding its breath. The light ahead flickered steadily, like it knew we were watching, like it wanted to be followed. We didn't speak. We both felt it. Something was unraveling. Not around us, inside us. Like the farther we walked, the more the past began to wake up, stretching limbs we thought we'd buried under years of silence. And then the cabin appeared. I hadn't seen it in years. Not since the night I swore I'd never come back here. It looked smaller now, sunken into the earth like it had tried to escape memory by decaying into the roots. The paint was flaking, windows fogged with condensation that somehow pulsed as we approached. The door was slightly ajar, swaying just enough to suggest it had been opened recently. She stopped at the porch and turned to me, her face unreadable. "You remember this place?" she asked. I nodded, but I didn't say what I remembered. The argument, the screaming, the glass, the thing I said that made her go silent for 2 whole days. The blood on my knuckles from punching the frame instead of the wall. The night we both said things we couldn't take back. This place had been our failed escape. We came here thinking nature would fix us, that a weekend without Wi-Fi and distractions could glue a cracking marriage back together. But instead, we made something else here. I don't mean a child. I mean something in the air. A scar. A wound in the space between us that never fully closed. She reached for the door. I stopped her. "We don't need to do this," I whispered. "There's nothing in there that'll fix any of it." "That's not why I came back," she said, not looking at me. And then she pushed it open. The smell hit first. Damp wood, rust, and something sweeter underneath, like flowers left too long in stagnant water. The inside was dark, but not empty. There were photographs on the walls. Hundreds of them. All of me. Sleeping, sitting, eating, working. Most I didn't recognize. Angles I never saw, moments I never remembered. Some were blurry, but some were so sharp it felt like I was looking into a mirror. Macy walked along the wall slowly, touching each frame with shaking fingers. "I didn't take these," she whispered. "I didn't either." We stood in silence. And then we both saw it. The final photo, pinned alone above the fireplace. It was her. At the party. In the dress. Only, she wasn't smiling. She wasn't dancing. She was crying. Alone. Clutching her phone. Waiting. Not the version I remembered. And in that moment, something inside me cracked. What if I never waited for her to choose? What if I already decided who she was that night, and rewrote the rest to make myself the victim? I turned to look at her, but she was staring at something else now. Another recorder. This one placed neatly on the mantel, wrapped in a ribbon. Her name scrawled across a piece of masking tape. She didn't move to touch it. Neither did I, because we both knew what it meant. There was still one more version of the story we hadn't heard. And this time, it wouldn't sound like either of us. The recorder felt heavier than it should have. Macy didn't even pick it up at first. She just stared at it like it might detonate if touched wrong. I stood behind her, every nerve in my spine screaming to grab it, smash it, walk away, pretend none of this had happened. But we didn't. Because you can only bury the truth for so long before it starts growing roots in your ribs. She pressed play. At first, nothing. Then a faint crackle, a slow inhale, and then a voice. Soft, familiar, but not mine. Not hers either. It was the voice of someone we had both forgotten, my therapist. From a year before everything fell apart. I'd started recording my sessions because I never trusted my memory. And apparently, one of those sessions made its way here. The voice spoke gently, patient as always. "Clayton, you don't have to prove anything to be loved. You don't have to be extraordinary. But you do need to stop assuming the worst of people just to protect yourself." A pause. Then my own voice, quieter, more uncertain than I'd ever heard it before. I always feel like she's going to leave. Like any second, she'll realize I'm not what she wanted. That she deserves more than a guy who fixes blenders and panics in grocery store lines. Has she ever said that? No. Then why do you keep pushing her away before she gets the chance? The tape went silent. And then, a newer voice. Macy's. But she wasn't speaking to me. She was speaking to the recorder. If you're hearing this, I guess I never figured out how to say it to your face. I loved you. Even when you left. Even when I hated you for it. I didn't cheat. I didn't even dance. I stood outside that party for hours, waiting for you to show up. I thought you didn't come because you didn't care. And now I know you thought the same of me. She took a shaky breath. I lost 2 years hating myself for something I never did. And I think you did too. Click. Silence. Not the heavy, haunted kind, but a strange stillness, like the kind that comes after a storm has passed and nothing's left to tear down. I looked at her. She looked at me. No blame. No bitterness. Just two people finally realizing they'd spent more time building walls than looking over them. She took my hand first. And for the first time in years, I let someone hold the broken parts of me without flinching. We didn't kiss. We didn't cry. We just walked out of that cabin together. Back into the night. Back toward the kind of silence that heals instead of haunts. And I knew, whatever came next, it would be something new. Not a return. Not a repeat. But a beginning.